Welcome to the Arbitration World podcast, in which we focus on significant developments and issues impacting international arbitration. We hope you enjoy this discussion. Please do get in touch with us if you have any questions about this week's episode or any areas you would like us to cover in a future podcast in this series.
Hi, and welcome back to Arbitration World. My name is Declan Gallivan, and I'm a Senior Associate at K&L Gates. This is the fourth and final episode of a mini-series where I'm joined by two arbitrators, Lucy Greenwood and Klaus Reichert, to hear their views on how to ensure arbitration proceedings are efficient and effective. In this final episode, we focus on arbitral awards. But before that discussion starts, I'm required to inform you of the following. This podcast series is limited in scope, as appropriate for a general audience and applicable time constraints. The information in this podcast series is not offered as legal advice, which should be obtained only from properly licensed legal professionals on the basis of the specific facts of a given case. And all speakers appear in their personal capacities, and any opinions or views offered are those of the relevant speaker alone, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions or views of K&L Gates LLP, K&L Gates Straits Law LLC, or any other entity or individual. Now, Klaus, if I could come to you first. It's not uncommon for parties to complain about arbitrators taking a very long time to write awards. Perhaps you could give us your views on how to ensure that arbitration awards are delivered efficiently.
This is an area that I would hesitate to get into because, of course, how long is a piece of string? There are internal dynamics, particularly in three-member tribunals, that require quite sensitive handling. One of the overriding aspects that I've certainly found sitting is that there is a distinct wish that there is one award and no dissent. That's a very strong driver amongst tribunals. And it's also the expectation of parties. It's the expectation of institutions. And certainly in my lifetime, the number of dissents that I've issued has been very, very small, not even half of one hand. So therefore, the chair, in seeking to achieve that one award, really has to take into account of that human interaction to make sure that all three members of the tribunal are on board and content with the one award, because if you try and push things too fast, depending on the circumstances, that may give rise to difficulties. It may give rise to somebody digging their heels in or upending something that one thought was agreed upon. Much depends on the individuals within a tribunal. And I think expecting that this is somehow a tick box exercise, that's perhaps a theory best expressed by people who have no practice. But there are, of course, certain cost implications when it comes to certain institutional rules that if you take too long. These are areas which it's all somewhat of a fine balance. But certainly from my own point of view, the people I've had the privilege to sit with in the main are keen to achieve the right result. They're not keen to achieve just any old result chucked onto a page so that parties see efficiency. There is, and particularly when it comes to investor-state arbitration, where you're dealing with treaty obligations of a sovereign state, and the potential legitimacy of an award vis-a-vis the eyes of the citizens of a country, it is very important to get this sort of thing right and reflect on things, because on reflection, people can change their minds. People can adopt nuances. The nuances are everywhere. And there's a great old judgment by Lord Hoffman from late in the 1980s about an appeal on an IP matter. But he mentions the area of nuance, even in the most brilliantly expressed award, that the nuances are everywhere that feed into a decision. And therefore, from a chair point of view, it's extremely important for me that as many, if not all of the nuances that collectively inform the decision are truly understood to the best possible extent by the members of the tribunal, so that when they issue the award, it's something that they are content with. And that takes time.
Thank you, Klaus. Lucy, what's your views on what Klaus said and what parties should expect in terms of timing of the delivery of an award and the reasoning in the award?
Yes, and again, it's about sort of setting expectations here and amending, adapting your conduct and the party's expectations depending on the type of case you are dealing with. I fundamentally believe that it is a duty of a tribunal to issue an award as promptly as possible, taking into account the very valid points that Klaus makes. I don't think it's acceptable that in commercial arbitrations, parties are waiting months, if not into a year or more for an award. I do think it is incumbent on tribunal members to have ensured that they've cleared their diaries sufficiently at the proceeding stage in order to have time to properly discuss the issues and to ventilate all the points in the way that Klaus describes. I don't see anything that Klaus describes as being contrary to an ability to render an award promptly and efficiently. You talk, Declan, about awards being too long and also taking too long. Yes, slightly ironically, I think of the quote that's attributed to Mark Twain, which is, I wrote you a long letter because I didn't have time to write a short one. We all know that, in fact, really tight, well-written, well-reasoned awards that are short and focused are actually harder, much harder to write than lengthy awards that you simply recite a party's positions for pages and pages and pages, but then don't actually deliver what the parties need and want to hear, which is the tribunal's detailed reasoning on those lengthy submissions made by the parties. So actually, I think there is a lot that arbitrators need to actually do in relation to the award, and I don't think we are necessarily delivering the standard of awards that we should be in relation to some of the arbitrations that we're seeing.
Klaus, any final thoughts?
I think there's an area which can assist with awards, which is judicial economy. And this gets mixed reaction. So if there is a point which, let's say, a claimant succeeds on X, is there a need to go through A, B, C, D, E, and F if there's a success on a point? Or if there is a failure, on a threshold point, is there a need to go over the rest of the case to summarize everything else? That's it in very broad outline. But judicial economy is an area which I think is worth at least further thought in the field of arbitration. Now, I know that there is the counter argument, which is that, well, the parties have put so much effort into their 20 different lines of defense or 20 different claims, and they'd rather like to see that analyzed and disposed of, even if it isn't crucial to the outcome of the case. And therein lies some of the potential delays, because if there is a threshold point, should that be it? And I know there are judgments in certain countries and practices that can be broadly described as judicial economy. And I think this is an area that is worthwhile exploring. And it's also worthwhile exploring with counsel as part of post-hearing submissions, or even at the very outset, to say, can you tell us if you succeed on X or Y, does that dispose of the case? So this may align expectation about the use of judicial economy into the future. Because in a way, what is the point of saying, well, you failed on the case because of X point, but I'm still going to say, even if I was wrong, the next point would not have succeeded, the next point would not have succeeded, and so on and so forth. Now, you may encounter, depending on the institution, resistance to this, or you may encounter resistance from counsel who say, we don't want that. We want our client has put a lot of money into this case and it needs to be dealt with in all respects. But it's an area, I think, which I personally don't have any fixed views on, but it's an area of interest for me.
Lucy, Klaus, thank you so much for joining us on Arbitration World. It's been a real privilege to hear your views. And thank you, everyone who tuned in. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Arbitration World Podcast. To listen to past episodes and receive notices for new episodes, subscribe by searching Hub Talks, that's HUB Talks, in your favorite podcast app. We hope you will join us next time for further discussions on hot topics and significant developments in international arbitration from around the globe.